calling for the closure of the southern border, referring to the community he once served or pretended to serve as illegals, and promoting the ridiculous notion that people should apply for asylum from their home countries. Ridiculous because that is not how asylum works, and I know for a fact that he knows that too. Noah is a perfect example of what I mean when I say that not all advocates are who they claim to be. He was quick to take the accolades for his work with the community and just as quick to stuff. That's what it is, to stuff on that same community in service of his political aspirations. Hate is powerful, fear even more so. So I understand why these folks feel it is necessary to stoke our basest instincts in order to win points within a party that rewards xenophobia and dehumanization. I mean, it worked wonders for 45, their dear leader, so it makes sense that the playbook has forever changed. But if you break it down even a little, the effects of their policy positions would be devastating to everyone else they claim to stand for, to everything else they claim to stand for. They promise a strong economy, but target and demean 25% of Nevada's workforce. They speak of family values, but hold views that threaten thousands of Nevada families with permanent separation. They point to their faith as a reason for opposing a woman's right to autonomy over her life and body, but they seem to have zero empathy for the women and children dying at our doors, begging us to help. Super Christ-like, my dude. I'm sure your Jesus is really proud. Again, the hypocrisy is mind-blowing. The mental gymnastics one has to engage in to deal in these nonsensical, completely contradictory positions is almost admirable, if it weren't so despicable. Neither of these men are dumb, though Noah's campaign page would beg to differ. Mizu. So you have to assume these choices are calculated and part of a larger strategy to garner votes. But to what end, if not an entirely self-serving one? If you really care about Nevada, you protect its immigrants, all its immigrants, without whom the state would collapse. If you care about families, you protect all families, not just the white ones or the ones you've anointed as deserving. And if you're going to tout your Christianity as a positive, then you all really need to start acting more Christ-like. I seem to remember something about, quote, "For I was hungry and you gave me food. I was thirsty and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger and you welcomed me," end quote. Otherwise, you're just liars and not even good ones. Be better, or to speak your people's language, be best, bro. This is from Martha E. Menendez, who lives in Nevada and is a legal manager for Justice in Motion. So yeah, this is an older piece, but it's still pertinent. I mean, leaving out these individuals, I don't know if they're running, if they won. I haven't followed up on any of this. But this same kind of rhetoric is still going on, and that same sort of hypocrisy is still happening all over the place. It's just, it's foul. And I guess, I say this all the time, and I feel like a broken record, but, immigrants are people. They're not a thing. They're not a group of something. They are people. They come from all different walks of life. They have all different kinds of stories. There are some good people. There's some not so good people. There's some wonderful people. I'm not here to say that all immigrants are wonderful. They're just people. And all I'm advocating is that we treat immigrants like people, as individuals, with individual stories, and we work from there. We look at situations, we look at histories, we look at all those different things, the same you would do with anybody you met. Let's say you meet somebody, a new person starts working at your place of employment. How do you get to know them? Well, you talk, you share anecdotes, you find out if their sense of humor is like yours, you find out if they have the same kinds of feelings about things that are important to you, and your friendship grows or stagnates or goes the opposite direction, depending on how they react to those things and how they act when you talk to them. That's how we should be treating immigrants. It shouldn't be an immigrants are X kind of thing, because immigrants aren't anything. They're all just people who do all sorts of different things and come from all sorts of different places, who happen to be born outside of this country and have come here. That's it. And that's how we should be looking at it. That's how we need to judge people, and how we should look at the way we treat the immigrants that come here. Look at our laws. Look at the situations we put them in. Yeah, so I mean, I've said this a million times before, and obviously I'm just saying it again. But it's like, it's the same fight over and over, year after year. I've been doing this for a long time, and it just seems like every year it's the same thing. It's a different president, it's a different crisis, it's a different this or that, but the general tone is still the same. There are people who are like, get these immigrants out here, build that wall, that whole notion. If you needed to understand the kind of person you were talking to throughout the Trump years, all you had to do was ask about the wall, because the wall was such a symbol. It never had any function but as a statement. It wouldn't actually keep people out. It wouldn't actually stop anything. People would go around it, they'd go over it, they'd do whatever they were going to do. But it was a statement to particularly the global South, saying, we don't want you here at all. We really, really, really don't want you here. Why did they build the Great Wall of China? Because the barbarians on the other side, we really, really, really don't want you coming into our country and doing what you're going to do. And the Trump's wall was the same thing. It was the same kind of statement. And the same pretending that you're defending against something. If somebody's coming here without the proper documentation, without following the proper legal processes, they're not invading. They're not attacking. They're trying to get something. They're trying to get to a safe place, to a place where they can make money, where they can buy a home, buy a car, do whatever they're going to do, be with their families, be with their friends, pursue an education. They're coming here because they really want something that's here. They're not attacking you. They're not trying to take something from you. It's not like they're looking over the wall and going, oh, that one guy there in Illinois, he's got that nice house. I want that house. I'm going to come and take it. He's got that great job. I want that job. I'm going to come and take it. There's nothing like that going on. At the most, they're saying, hey, that guy in Illinois has got that nice house. I want a house like that. Hey, that guy's got a nice job. I want a job like that. That's what they're doing. And that's not taking a thing from you. That is not any threat to you or anyone. And it's just crazy to pretend otherwise. Okay, I'm sorry. Apparently I'm in a very much of a editorializing mood today, a pontificating mood today. And I'm not reading you any stories. I'm just giving you opinions. Okay, so here's something. This is from the Economic Times. All right, we talking about the economy, but this is kind of interesting because it's about Canada. Okay, the problems we are having here. So the title of this is Canada is sitting over an immigration backlog of almost 2 million applications. Wow. Sounds a lot like the U.S. Let's read on. Almost 2 million people around the world are waiting for the outcome of their Canadian visa applications, according to a new report. Data from Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada, or IRCC, has shown that the country has a backlog of 1.8 million as of February 1st, and this is in 2022. According to media reports, the backlog includes applications from future citizens, permanent residents, international students, temporary workers, and visitors. Adding up these categories brings the total to 1,815,628 persons waiting for decisions, up 0.1% from December 2021. Pending permanent resident applications have gone down by 29,165 applications since October, with the economic class seeing most improvement, followed by the family class. Study permit applications have declined since October, but the overall temporary residence inventory is up by nearly 73,000 persons over the same period. Demand for various temporary residence categories has increased throughout the pandemic, especially to fill in for Canada's worker shortages. There are three types or classes of temporary residents: visitors, workers, and students. On January 31st, Minister Fraser announced that Canada is planning to make 147,000 PR decisions in the first quarter of 2022, double that from the same period in 2021. Fraser also said IRCC's $85 million budget will allow processing service standards to return to normal for study permits, work permits, and permanent resident cards renewals by the end of the year. Despite the severe backlog, Canada's population rose to 37 million people in 2021, up 5.2% from 2016, driven mostly by immigration, according to official data, with the downtowns and distant suburbs of large cities seeing the strongest growth. Canada added 1.8 million people between 2016 and 2021, with nearly 80% of those new residents arriving from elsewhere in the world, retaining its position as the fastest-growing G7 country, Statistics Canada said in its Census 2021 release. So, clearly the pandemic had a huge effect on people moving from place to place. And it really cut down on government's ability to deal with that. But I was surprised by that Canada was that far behind at that time is pretty astounding, I would say. And it just goes to show that people are constantly moving. And if you let them move, they'll just move and everything will be fine. It's just when you start making it hard for some reason that, then it becomes a big mess. So this is interesting. There's apparently something called the Immigration Reform in the America Competes Act of 2022. So it's a very small thing, but I just thought I'd mention it because we're looking for news of any kind of movement on immigration anywhere. So the America Competes Act, I'm not sure, I don't know that much about it, but let me just read you this. This is the immigration aspect of that. Okay, so the executive summary states, the U.S. immigration system needs fundamental reform to counter worsening demographic trends, such as the country's declining birth rate and aging population, and to refocus immigration criteria to prioritize high-skilled workers. The America Creating Opportunities for Manufacturing, Preeminence in Technology and Economic Strength, otherwise known as the America Competes Act, of 2022, which is H.R. 4521, contains the first immigration reforms to be considered in regular order by this Congress. Seriously, the first. It includes 3 reforms: a new entrepreneur's visa, an exemption for some skilled immigrants from numerical caps, and temporary protected status for residents of Hong Kong. These are such simple things. While the bill would modestly raise the amount and skill level of U.S. immigration, it is no substitute for a more comprehensive overhaul. So, the United States needs comprehensive immigration reform. The last time the United States significantly changed its method for awarding visas was in 1965, when Congress passed the Immigration and Nationality Act, or the INA. This law changed the immigration system from one based on country of origin limits to one based on family reunification. Today, however, the country faces severe demographic pressure from slowing population growth, an aging population, and declining birth rates. To counter these trends, Congress should undertake reform to increase the level of legal immigration, which can translate into greater labor force growth. Moreover, it should refocus immigration criteria toward economic considerations, that is, prioritizing immigrants based on skill level rather than family reunification. By taking this approach, the United States can raise productivity and Americans' standards of living as well. I take exception to this, but we're just reading this. Thus far, the 117th Congress has not undertaken immigration reform in regular order. The only immigration reforms attempted were those included in the Build Back Better Act to be considered under reconciliation protections. Ultimately, the Senate parliamentarian held that these reforms did satisfy the conditions of the Byrd Rule and were removed from the reconciliation bill. I'm sorry, I think that's supposed to mean to say that these reforms did not satisfy. I think that's a typo. Anyway, House Democrats recently released the America Creating Opportunities for Manufacturing, Preeminence in Technology and Economic Strength Act of 2022, or the Competes Act, which I'm not going to read the full thing out again, to increase the United States' economic competitiveness with China. The House bill includes 3 major immigration-related provisions that would reshape the United States' high-skilled immigration policy. This paper provides a brief summary and evaluation of the America Competes Act's proposed immigration reforms. While the reforms would modestly raise the amount and skill level of U.S. immigration, they are no substitute for a comprehensive overhaul. The first major provision of the America Competes Act would amend the Immigration and Nationality Act to create a new visa category focused on startup companies. The W visa category would be composed of 3 classifications of foreign nationals: W1, entrepreneurs with ownership interest in a startup; W2, essential employees of a startup; and W3, W1 and W2 holders, spouses, and children. Non-immigrants on a W1 visa would start with a 3-year visa and could apply for an extension of up to another 5 years if they and their startups meet certain requirements and benchmark measurements. Eventually, W1 visa holders could apply for legal permanent resident status as immigrant entrepreneurs if their startup proves successful. W2 visas would be limited and allocated based on the size of the startup and could be used for up to 6 years, assuming the non-immigrant meets certain requirements. The second major provision would exempt certain foreign nationals and their families from the numerical limits on immigration visas if they have a doctoral degree in science, technology, engineering, or mathematics from a qualified U.S. institution or from a foreign institution with a STEM program equivalent to that of a U.S. institution. The third major provision focuses on residents of Hong Kong. The bill would provide temporary protected status and refugee status for qualifying Hong Kong residents for 18 months after the bill's enactment, allowing them to live and work in the United States. Also, the Department of State and Department of Homeland Security would provide a special immigrant status for up to 5,000 qualified high-skilled Hong Kong residents for up to 5 fiscal years. Finally, the bill would require W-1 visa holders, immigrant entrepreneurs, and immigrant STEM doctoral holders to pay a one-time supplemental fee of $1,000 that would go toward funding STEM scholarships for low-income U.S. students. The provisions in the America Competes Act would modestly raise the amount and skill levels of U.S. immigration. These are desirable changes. Greater immigration raises the growth rate of the employed population, leading to more output and income. Improving skill levels results in higher productivity growth, which translates into higher worker compensations and standards of living. Finally, promoting entrepreneurial vigor through the bill's new visa categories will spur new methods and products and improved competitiveness. Nevertheless, the America Competes Act reforms are changes at the margins of the existing system, confined to high-skilled individuals and entrepreneurs. This is not a substitute for broader substantive reform for all classes of immigrants. Congress should consider a total overhaul of the legal immigration system, shifting from focus on family reunification to one of economic growth. The American Action Forum has proposed such a legal immigration system that could advance entrepreneurship, augment productivity gains, fill skill gaps, and combat demographically driven labor force declines. Well, so time for my editorial aside here. I do not agree that we should necessarily shift from family focus, family reunification, to economic growth. This is a very, very much it falls into the category of looking at immigrants in terms of what can you do for me? You know, you want to come here, so what are you going to give me? What do I get from you? And it ignores the fact that you want to come here. What do you get from it? How does this help you? I mean, I get that this is an aspect that should be considered, but I don't agree that we should shift the focus. Yeah, I just don't agree with that. But having said that, at least this is something, and it really does sound like a bipartisan thing where Democrats have managed to eke out these little bits and pieces of saying, okay, well, I guess it's okay to have immigrants come in if they pay a lot of money and they do this and they do that for us and they help us make money and, blah, blah, blah. It's such a capitalistic thing. I don't know. Anyway, I'm not going to go on and on about it, but yeah, it's something anyway, and it's something that people are talking about, and, it would make some little difference. Gosh, I'm pouring water all over my face. Okay, I'm getting near the end of the show here. I have to pick and choose here. Okay, the last show we talked a little bit about who to blame for what is going on with immigration, what's not going on with immigration, and all that sort of thing. So here's something, just so you know, I see a lot of articles that are like, Biden administration continues Trump's immigration stance, things like that, mostly just clickbait. But, it's important to understand that the Biden administration is doing some things. Where it can do something, it's doing something. So this is entitled, Biden Administration Lifts What Critics Call Backdoor Immigration Ban on Laos. The measure is a great first step to undo some of the harm that has been done by the Trump administration, Cam Moa of the nonprofit Southeast Asian Resource Action Center said. So what is this? The Biden administration has lifted most of its visa sanctions on Laos, marking a significant step for thousands of Southeast Asian Americans, many of them refugees, and their families in the immigration process, experts say. The development, announced Monday, ends a Trump-era immigration ban that effectively halted the issuing of any travel or immigrant visas to people in Laos. The sanctions, largely seen as a retaliatory measure used to pressure Laos into accepting more deportees, could reunite some 2,000 people with loved ones. Over the last few years, they've been unable to sponsor their spouses or kids because of these arbitrary sanctions that are very ethnically based. Cam Moa, Director of National Policy at the nonprofit Southeast Asia Resource Action Center, told NBC Asian America. In a memo, the Biden administration wrote that the majority of Laos citizens who have applied or will apply for travel or immigrant visas will no longer be subjected to the ban. a move authorized by Secretary of State Anthony Blinken. However, the document noted that sanctions will continue to be in place for certain government officials contingent on whether Laos cooperates with the U.S. demands to accept deportees. The move comes after more than 30 advocacy groups and several members of Congress signed a letter spearheaded by Representative Ilhan Omar of Minnesota that demands the Department of Homeland Security lift the Trump-era sanctions, which included those on Laos. The letter in part called the sanction a backdoor immigration ban. The visa sanctions continue to harm refugees and asylum seekers in the United States by tearing families apart and forcing governments seeking to harm asylum seekers to repatriate those individuals. The letter, addressed to the Biden administration in September, read. Wow, that is a weirdly written sentence. The letter, addressed to the Biden administration in September, read. Okay. MOA explained that for years, Laos has remained on the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency's list of recalcitrant countries, a distinction given to governments that routinely refuse to issue the travel documents required for the U.S. to carry out deportations. In 2018, under the Trump administration, the country was slapped with diplomatic sanctions as pressure to aid in the removal of more Laotian immigrants. The Department of Homeland Security had asked Laos to accept a quota of deportees, which the country failed to meet. MOA said the U.S. responded by escalating its punitive measures, expanding the visa ban. It just is indicative of how certain niche and technical laws can be used by nefarious administrations to target communities of color and immigrant communities, MOA said. The Laotian American community is made up of a large refugee population that was forced to flee their home countries in Southeast Asia due to U.S. occupation in the 1970s. With loved ones separated due to war, family-based immigration has been one way in which these households can reunite. But obtaining the documents has come with a weight, and even without bans, families can end up on a visa backlog for more than a decade in the worst cases. Mao said organizers will continue to press the Biden administration to lift all sanctions which have been imposed on Myanmar, Burundi, Cambodia, and Eritrea as well. These sanctions need to be repealed because they are being used as a tool to pressure countries into removing more folks that those countries don't even want back, or those who face harm if they were to be removed to those countries, MOA said. In Southeast Asian community, for example, sanctions on Cambodia led to an increase in the deportation of Cambodian nationals by 279% between 2017 and 2018, according to ICE data. Many of those who were removed came to the U.S. legally as refugees, but had since been convicted of crimes. Kevin Lowe, an immigration attorney at legal rights organization Advancing Justice, Asian Law Caucus, previously explained that Cambodian Americans who face deportation have often avoided any contact with the criminal justice system and have established families and careers. For almost all the cases we've encountered, the crime was committed decades ago, Lowe said. Since that time, most of these people have demonstrated that they have changed their lives, started families, and are essential members of their communities. Well, that's all I have time for. I've run out of time, as they say. And so I'm going to have to say goodbye, but we'll see you next time. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.